Welcome back, Pack. We are here with another episode of Speak Now, and we finally have a full roster here today. Steve and Eli both joining from their respective locations. Guys, I'm sure you're feeling pretty good after beating the Ratbirds last night.
I'm personally feeling great. I mean, I just looked at Alex Anzalone's Instagram post, which the caption was "No flocking" with Kodak Black's song playing. So that got me pretty hype again. I mean, me and Stevie were texting probably till close to 1 a.m. last night, if that tells you anything. We were pretty excited. The Ravens are always a tough team. Jonathan, you probably know that better than anybody. They are a team that is a tough competitor. And I tell you what, Lamar Jackson was bottled yesterday.
Yeah, we definitely took the tough, basically controlled the line of scrimmage the entire game. Lamar didn't know really, especially in the second half, which direction really to look, behind and front to the side. So a lot of misnomers were out there about Goff outside, Lions on the road, Lamar primetime versus Goff primetime. The whole coordinator thing with the Lions barely being on top 10 lists for power rankings. I think a lot of that stuff was put aside by most. Some are still trying to hold on to that today. But yeah, it was very satisfying for sure. But then again, it's only week 3. I know after about 5 or 6 weeks last season, the Lions were going to the Super Bowl and that sort of thing. So a lot of things can fall apart pretty quickly. One of the best things, obviously, other than the win that came out of the game was relatively injury-free. So that's also huge. And I know one of the topics we're going to touch on a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think one kudos just to the NFL for giving us such a great game for Monday night. Great to see potential Super Bowl matchup later in the season. I guess we'll see. But as you alluded to, the running backs just huge for Detroit. They continue to be amazing. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. Without them, man, I don't know where this team would be at. And speaking of running backs, we had a few go down in week 3. Some really key guys: Najee Harris, James Conner. You had Aaron Jones, who's on IR now. If I'm missing anyone, let me know. But Eli, just curious of your thoughts with the running back injuries. Which team do you think this is going to affect the most, losing one of their running backs?
It's tough because I don't feel like any of the super major running backs, when you see they're big injuries in the sense of James Conner, Aaron Jones. You had Zach Charbonnet, who was out last week. I think he's going to be back. They're all very good backs. Like Aaron Jones, great receiving back. James Conner he's flourished as a later career guy, which is kind of opposite of what you see in today's NFL. Usually they excel in the first couple years, like Najee Harrison's first contract, and then they kind of fizzle out the shelf life of running backs. But I think when you look at the teams where they've lost them, with the Vikings, the big breakout candidate Jordan Mason last year, it kind of just opens him up for the Vikings, which we showed that was fantastic for him when they destroyed the Bengals. And it's also kind of the same for the Cardinals. We get to see Trey Benson now, which they use second round capital on him. So they clearly like him a lot. It's just when you have a guy like James Conner, you're not really going to get Trey Benson more than probably 100 touches a year with James Conner healthy. But I honestly think the one that impacts the most, and honestly a positive way, would be the Cardinals in the sense that they get to see Trey Benson. James Conner did start out the year kind of slow, which is kind of been a common theme with some guys like McCaffrey, Kamara, are 2 guys that have started slow on the ground, and Josh Jacobs. Those are 3 notable names who have struggled to start. So I think it'll be interesting for the Cardinals to get to see Trey Benson, especially because their other young weapon in Marvin Harrison has struggled. So I honestly think it'll impact them positively, which is kind of shocking when you're talking about an injury to a Pro Bowl running back.
I'm going to completely disagree with that, just because I saw a stat today on Trey Benson. James Conner is he's a fantastic back. He's one that's going to get those hard yards. And I saw a stat on Trey Benson that he's one of the worst is getting some of those yards after contact. So that is a stat that I saw. And just to touch on Jordan Mason, yes, they definitely need Aaron Jones back just to give that 50-50. I know as the season went on last year, Jordan Mason kind of became less and less effective over the long haul. So yeah, when they're fresh and they come in, I think Mason, they'll be fine. The Vikings will be fine, just like they'll be fine more. I think it was more of Carson Wentz and kind of the matchup with Cincinnati. The biggest one that we didn't kind of touch on, which I know was an injury before this season, and I believe they're 0-3, is the Texans missing Joe Mixon. So I think that's a huge one. They're still trying to find their identity. The running game, they have a lot of good pieces on the defense, but Joe Mixon is just a fantastic 3-down back that they're trying to piece together, broken down Nick Chubb and some combination of Damian Pierce and Ogunwale and Woody Marks, which I think eventually Marks will get more touches because Chubb's kind of out of gas, but Mixon's a huge one, maybe the biggest. I do agree Benson's going to get a good shot, but they're going to have to kind of mix up those touches too.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is huge for Amari and Hampton, just in the sense I know a lot of fantasy owners have been frustrated with some of these early, rookie running backs that were taken early. Now without Najee as like that like handicap to him, do they just let Hampton run wild? Hopefully, and hopefully he can, right? Hopefully he has that ability. But yeah, crazy that you had two former Steeler running backs go down with season-ending injuries in the same week. Najee Harris, you alluded to this. Najee Harris did not miss a single game on his rookie contract with the Steelers. So this is, I mean, that was one of the things why Mike Tomlin used to speak so highly about him is the best availability, or the best ability is availability. To lose a guy like Najee just this early in the season, I don't think it impacts them being contenders or whatnot. But I mean, I do think that as the season wears on, you definitely can't. Now you really can't afford to lose Hampton. Otherwise, that offense is going to look a lot worse. But yeah, I'm super excited for Trey Benson. See what he's got in store. It's good if you've had him on your bench or anything like that. It's a good hold.
Yeah, and I do think in the talks of when I have watched him play, I do agree he hasn't looked great. And James Conner does clearly have that kind of David Montgomery-esque ability to get a couple yards and something where it isn't much. But it's also the fact of there's running backs for me, it's like a lot of the times, like Ashton Genty hasn't started out great. There's a couple of those guys who have slow starts. Like Trey Benson, I think might have only 100 touches in his career so far. So I do think that the Cardinals would be an interesting one to see that if Trey Benson does struggle a couple of weeks, their defense is improved this year. That would be an interesting one to see if they're possibly on the running back trade market for a guy like Elvin Kamara or someone like that, who I believe is close to an expiring deal. That could be a really interesting thing for the Cardinals to pursue, especially in a division that has arguably had the most injuries thus far with the Rams and their secondary, and then Nick Bosa getting hurt for the Niners. So I do think that could be an interesting one, a domino to play out, and probably closer to the deadline, of course.
Yeah, you got to imagine that Kamara gets dealt at some point this year. That just feels like it makes too much sense. Like whether it's like a place like Kansas City, like the Chiefs need a running back, man. Like Pacheco has not been it. Kareem Hunt has not been it. I don't think Brashard Smith is it. Yeah, the Chiefs, man, the Chiefs need something, man. They need some kind of life. Kamara kind of, I feel like, fits with what they will do. But yeah, crazy season to start. Steve talked about Joe Mixon. We talked, I think, last week or the week before about Austin Eckler losing, obviously, him going down for the season. So you already have like some major guys going down. We'll see how that continues. But let's go we're into week 3, or we're just done through week 3. We're entering week 4. We're about to be a fourth of the way through the NFL season. Oftentimes teams that start poorly, end poorly. Teams that start good end good. It's just the season. We've seen some divisions have more teams start well than others. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on who through the first 3 weeks would you consider the best division in the National Football League right now?
I'll start it out. It was before week 3. I was on the fence. I was probably going to lean towards the NFC West with how it played out, but after kind of seeing some of the injuries, I do think that weekend, especially the 49ers, once again, the injury bug, that kind of hampers them. The Cardinals, a big injury with their starting running back. So I'm going to shift back after Monday Night Football to the NFC North. I think the NFC North, the Packers had a down week, but the other 3 teams showed some real promise. The Bears finally showcased some offensive talent. Looked like Ben Johnson finally opened up the playbook a little bit more. They had that really nice flea flicker to Luther Burden. The running back situation's a little murky. DeAndre Swift has not been effective, but I think Caleb Williams, for the most part, has looked decent through 2 games. I think the Lions game was a hiccup, but he still had some good moments, especially in the first half. And then the Lions are a juggernaut. These past 2 weeks, they've kind of solidified and kind of feels like that Packers game's like a month past. Their offense and defense have both looked way different. Even their defense in that second half against the Packers pretty much stalled them. And then the Packers, they have a top 5 defensive unit with Micah Parsons. The only concern with them would probably be the offense, in the sense of their offensive line has struggled, and Zach Tom left the game again. Their left tackles, so that's something to watch. But I think it's got to be the North. I think they possess the top 2 teams in the NFC right now, and the Packers and the Lions. You could argue the Eagles and the Bucks could also both be up there, in the Rams. But I think it's still the NFC North. But like we said, it is early.
Yeah, I'd agree at this point. Obviously, I think before the season that the AFC West was mentioned as well. Just having the Chiefs, the Broncos, possibly the Raiders coming into play. Obviously, that hasn't come to fruition. The Chiefs will get better as the season goes on. Doesn't mean they'll necessarily make any noise later in the year, but I would tend to agree. It's kind of between the NFC West and NFC North. I would give the nod to the North. Agree on everything you said on the Packers. One thing I did see is that there's only 6 teams with a winning record in the AFC currently. So I think any answer outside of the one of the NFC divisions would be, maybe there'd be some bias involved in that. But yeah, I just think several teams in the NFC are showing strong on both sides of the ball. And you're seeing that with the Packers, the Lions, and also the Vikings in that division, and even to some extent the Bears, where you have a lot of talent on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Other than maybe kind of what the Chargers have shown, you don't really see that on both sides of the ball in the AFC. You've seen a lot of weakness on defense as far as Buffalo and obviously Baltimore last night, and even the week 1. So I just think, the NFC doesn't mean they're going to, win the Super Bowl, but I think it's a little, if you take Buffalo and maybe the Chargers in there, the top 7 or 8 teams, there's probably 5 or 6 that are currently in the NFC. Obviously that could change, but I would definitely agree the NFC North currently would be the top after 3 weeks.
Yeah, was thinking about this, and there's a couple. The AFC North, I try to think of arguments because I think the Browns are better than people are giving them credit for. Steelers are going to be a playoff team, in my opinion. Ravens are going to be in contention for the 1 seed in the AFC. I think my biggest holdup there is I don't know what the Bengals are going to do. Before this past week, I would have thought the Bengals would still be like a 9-win team with Jake Browning, still like a competitive team, but they got their butts kicked by Carson Wentz. But no, I'm going with the NFC West. I think in terms of top talent, the NFC North, the Lions and the Packers up there. But I do think overall, the collective of talent in the NFC West is just superior. I think that there's three, maybe even four playoff potential teams. I don't actually think that the Vikings are a playoff team, and I'm iffy on the Bears. But really, for me, what it comes down to, I'm a Steelers fan. I love defense. The NFC West has had the best collective defense of any division. As a division, they've only allowed just over 17 points a game so far. Still early in the season, still a very early sample size, but impressive nonetheless. I know that the 49ers just lost Nick Bosa. I think they'll be able to manage through the injury. They might not be as like top tier as they maybe were looking to be, but I think they could still be a playoff team. I think the Rams are top five in the NFC without a doubt. I think the Seahawks are sneaky good. I think their defense could end up being the best in the league this year. And Sam Darnold's can win you games. Like he's not elite, but not horrible. And the Cardinals, honestly, they're a team that's interesting too because their defense has looked pretty solid so far, and they're missing their arguably probably their best piece on their defensive line, and Walter Nolan, their first round rookie, who can return as early as week 5, I believe. So it's a defense that we definitely need. I saw that the defensive line's been struggling to get pressures, but yeah, I losing James Conner hurts. I don't think that rules them out of contention. I think that's a team that could be a boom or bust type of team. So for me, it's the NFC West as of right now. But I do concede that the Lions and the Packers are better than any of the teams in the NFC West.
And I do think we'll know better on the Cardinals once they start to play, I think, their NFC West foes. Because if you look at their 2 wins, they beat the Saints and the Panthers, and they almost blew that Panthers game. So that's kind of the thing where I have a hard time fully being committed to the Cardinals at this point because, like we've said, their defense has struggled with pressure. They really only have Josh Sweat on that line. That's proven, and even he has had some issues. I do like their Will Johnson pick. That was great value in the second round. Nobody can defer that. But I do love the Seahawks shout as well because that defense, Mike McDonald's finally starting to flow into that as well, which we've seen clearly.
Yeah, I think the records are going to be a little misleading for the NFC West by the end of the year because they are playing the NFC South and the AFC South this year, so which are probably the 2 worst divisions in the NFL. So that's going to be a huge benefit in the schedule and could get an extra wild card out of that and kind of steal that away from, I guess, what we would probably all consider a better team, maybe someone like Minnesota or Washington Commanders, with their injuries, things like that. So the Seahawks or 49ers could easily steal a playoff position from one of those teams, if things play out right.
Yeah, and I think you gotta penalize a team like the Packers for losing to the Browns too. That was great. That was so great. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point, Steve. Which, yeah, I think we'll just see how it all plays out. It's still early in the season. Like, obviously, we'll know a lot more by week 6, week 7 as it goes on. That being said, we like to overreact this early in the season. Last year we had the Saints starting out hot only to completely fall apart. At least they're not catfishing us again this year. But is there a team out there that is misleading us into thinking they are better than they are? Are the Colts this year's Saints, or are they legit? Are the Lions actually back, or will they look more like week 1? Eli, let's get into this. You want to go through contenders and pretenders here, just 3 weeks into the season. What teams you got for us?
Yeah, I got 4 that I just kind of wanted to run by you that have good records that probably weren't at the point that we expected them to be, whether one way or the other. And my first one would be the Colts. I think it's one that we're 3 weeks in now. We're like, okay, it was just week 1, Daniel Jones. And we keep going week by week like, oh, it's just Daniel Jones. I'm still trying to pander if Indiana Jones is a contender. It's baffling to say, but I'm not. I think Shane Steichen might have something.
Yeah, I definitely, as far as that division, again, a weak division. So I would still put them, if I put them against the top teams in the AFC, I don't know that I would take them. They do have a lot on defense. They have a lot of key pieces on their team. A lot, Jonathan Taylor, Daniel Jones. I think that's a great combo. Obviously, adding Tyler Warren to that offense. I would put them still as a pretender. Saying that, I still think they're probably going to win the division, go to the playoffs. But I think a first round exit, even against a defense like Pittsburgh or someone like that, if they had that matchup, like say they're the 3 seed or something like that, and the Steelers are 6 or something like that. I think that'd be a tough game for the Colts to win in the playoffs. Daniel Jones and that type of scenario where they play a top team in the AFC. So I'd still put them as a pretender.
I disagree with Steve on this one. I think that the Colts are a legit contender, and I think they're all but guaranteed to win that division just through 3 weeks. That's what it's looking like. And if they do that, I think they win a playoff game. I think that they are going to be a team that's going to be very hard to beat at home this year. This week is going to be a huge test going into LA to take on the Rams. We're going to really learn a lot more about Danny Dimes and if he is legit. But by a lot of accounts, man, he's always had like the physical attributes. Could run, can throw. Well, the O line just was terrible with his time in New York. I mean, he's a guy that went to like what Duke, so he's got the head knowledge, and I think we're really starting to see him come into his own. I'm pretty high on them, and just their capacity, and I think honestly, we're seeing Shane Steichen be able to just be a good offensive play caller, schemer, and all that, and put Daniel Jones in positions to be successful, which I think actually is way more important than the quarterback's overall ability. I think when you have a coach like a Kevin O'Connell or a coach like a Kyle Shanahan, a Sean McVay that can put your quarterback in position to win games and be successful, I think that is going to take a team a lot farther in today's NFL. Obviously, you still need the elite quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl, but to win a playoff game, I think Daniel Jones and the Colts will definitely accomplish that this year. They are contenders for me.
Yeah, and I do think I lean towards contenders. I think here in both your points. I think my one on Steve mentioning the Pittsburgh defense. I feel like they already carved up a really good defense in the Broncos. I mean, the Broncos have struggled out of the gate defensive wise, which is a bit of a shocker to me. They're not in this contender pretender because they're 1-2 and they struggled. So I think him breaking down that defense. I do think Daniel Jones having an offensive minded coach, I think has really helped him. And I think Shane Steichen has also really helped him to have a guy that's not exactly like Jalen Hurts, but he is more accurate than Anthony Richardson. So he provides a little better scheme for Shane Steichen. But moving on to another team that the Colts have won in dominant fashion, get to 3-0. A team that has scraped by their 3 wins. They've won by less than 10 points combined in all 3 games. They stand at 3-0. It's the Buccaneers. It's a bit of an interesting one. They've made the playoffs the last 5 years. They've dominated that division. But they've 2 weeks in a row they've had to win on a game-winning field goal. So contender pretender on the Buccaneers. Really interesting one in my opinion.
Yeah, I would just say because of the last couple of seasons and kind of the roster, you have a lot of experience on the roster, good coaching staff, things like that. I would put them slightly ahead of the Colts, so where they could win a playoff game, and I'm not sure about the Colts. So I would call the Bucs a contender, but very lukewarm on that. Yeah, the games are close. You have some injuries there. Kalijah Kancey down for the season. Mike Evans injury. Some things that are going to hurt them, but obviously they reinforced wide receiver with Ibuka. they'll have Jalen McMillan later, way late in the season. Great running game. Just overall, really solid squad. That's going to be a tough out for anybody, no matter what. And I just think they have an overall more solid and veteran and experienced roster than someone like the Colts. So I put them as a contender.
At this point in the season, I think one of the most, if not the most important thing for a team is just to find ways to win football games. Nothing's going to be perfect this early in the season. Uh, you really want to start playing your good football, like come around like Thanksgiving time, and the fact that the Bucs are 3-0 to start, and they're in a very easy division. I think that this is a team that is indeed a contender, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were one of the top 2 seeds in the NFC. I think Baker could be an MVP candidate when the season's all said and done. I'm not saying that he'll be like the MVP candidate, but just a guy that you throw in there just because of just his moxie, his play. Yeah, the Bucs to me have a clear path to the playoffs in that division, but I also think that they are going to be a team that we could potentially see in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's exactly what I thought. The winning and the tough ways part. It doesn't matter how the game went; it just matters in the win column. 3-0, and they haven't necessarily played bad in any of those games. It's not like they've scraped by and got lucky to get a win. It's 3-0, and their offense is very great. My only concern would probably be the defense in some aspects. I think their secondary can be a big liability. And then we mentioned Kancey being out for the year can be another interesting thing. But they do got Vita Vea, one of my favorite guys, not on the Lions. But a team that we mentioned earlier, which is probably my third and final one that was really interesting to me. There was one other one. It's the Seattle Seahawks. They're an interesting one where they had one really, really bad week, especially on offense out of Sam Darnold. But they've also had 2 really good games, and their defense in general, all 3 weeks, they're about 14 to 17 points per game is what they're giving up per. And Mike McDonald is a defensive coach. And they have Kenneth Walker starting to get his footing. And JSN looks like a certified stud through 3 weeks. Contender, pretender, especially in that tough division that we've been highlighting.
Yeah, I would. If I take, kind of goes back to the original point maybe earlier in our discussions. If I take 5 or 6 teams that I consider the top teams in the NFC, I probably wouldn't put them on that list. I can go through that's even taking the Commanders out of it. So you got the Eagles, you got the Rams, you got the Lions, you got the Packers. So I kind of go down the list. So there again, just like the Colts, if Seattle and home field doesn't seem to be as big a deal these days. So I know they have the 12th man and all that. So I know, and that's saying they win the division, which is no guarantee. You got the Rams and 49ers. So they're just going to slug each other, up and down, kind of as that season goes on. We did mention their easier schedule, but I still see some holes on that roster. They don't have much beyond JSN. They don't have a really super reliable tight end option. Their running game, well, it has been good. It's been, a blowout game against the Saints. Hard to judge. Yards per carry has been kind of up and down for Walker and Charbonnet through the season. And yes, the defense has looked really good, but then if I could see them going up against like an Eagles or Lions team and just having 40 put on them pretty quickly. So I would put the Seahawks as a pretender at this point.
Yeah. Talking about like the top tier teams in the NFC, Eagles, Bucks, Lions, Packers, Rams in no particular order. I think that's like your top tier. Second tier would be like Commanders, 49ers. I would put the Seahawks on kind of like the lower end of that second tier. I could see this team being a team that makes it to the playoffs, whether it's through 9-8, 10-7, like squeaks into the playoffs. I don't see them winning a playoff game this year, and I think Steve alluded to this. Like the lack of weapons is concerning. Assuming that they add stuff in the offseason, add players, dynamic playmakers, I think this is a team that next year we could be talking about being in contention for their division and also for a playoff win. And just this defense can really carry them a long ways in the coming years. I just don't think that this is that year. I think it's also concerning that you're down to Kenneth Walker. I know Zach Charbonnet just missed some time. He's coming back, but we can kind of count on Kenneth Walker missing some time throughout the year. I feel like that's become a norm, unfortunately. So this is just something where I don't see them being a legit contender this year. Still could see them making the playoffs, but in terms of actually being a threat to win a playoff game, not for me this year.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with all you guys' points. They are 2-1, so that helps them. The light schedule helps them. So, like we said, they could probably sneak in. They do have some really nice defensive parts that would be interesting that could win them games in the end, especially against those good playoff teams like the Rams that are pretty much must wins for them to really get in that higher up in that division. It really all depends on that offense. I think, Sam Darnold, can he be start of year Sam Darnold, what he was on the Vikings, or will he be week 18 and wild card Sam Darnold, who wildly struggled and had, I think, 5 turnovers combined in those last 2 games, which they're paying him to be that guy. So it'll be interesting to see Sam Darnold against the Steelers. He had some really bad throws and the defense bailed him out, but I don't think that'll happen too often.
No, I agree with you on that. Like watching that Steelers game, I know that the score was like a double-digit score, but honestly, in watching that game and after cooling down from Caleb Johnson being so bad with the not knowing the rules, oh my gosh! But it's like it was really up until that point. Like that was, if you take away Rodgers' interception in the end zone, which was probably more on Calvin Austin than it was on Aaron Rodgers, and then if you take away that kickoff touchdown, then that's a lot closer of a game. That's not a team that's putting up 30 points. I know like the Steelers defense technically gets credited with having given up 30 points in that game. They didn't actually. It was special teams gave up a touchdown. That's a lot closer of a game. We could have been really realistically looking at the Seahawks as 1-2, but that's well, as we talked about, early season football, win any way you can, and kudos to them. They came into Pittsburgh in 80-degree weather and just kicked our butts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've seen through the season is you have a lot more games affected by special teams. Obviously, we saw that last week. We didn't really get into it, but just I'd say there's 15 to 20% of the games this year have been affected by special teams play and huge plays throughout the game, whereas in previous years, I would say almost or hardly any of the games, other than maybe a missed kick here or there. But yeah, it's been crazy first 3 weeks of the season.
We've got a couple minutes before we take a break. I have a question in terms of contender pretender for you guys. Broncos defense. They've given up a decent amount of points so far for the first 3 games. Are they? Is this just early season struggles, or do we think this is going to be a problem for them down the road?
I don't think I'm as much concerned about the defense because I think there are some areas where I just don't think they've made those really big plays, like those interceptions, forcing the fumbles. Their pass rush will come, like Nick Bonito and Zach Allen are 2 really good pass rushers, 2 bona fide stars that aren't talked about enough. And they lost Baron Browning, so that could hurt them in that aspect. But I think Bo Nix hasn't been particularly effective at all times. He's had good plays, like the Cortland Sutton 52-yard touchdown was great, and he had a couple good deep shots to Troy Franklin in that Colts game, which they ultimately lost on, an iffy play at the end with the field goal. But I do think Bo Nix needs more consistency in that offense, especially because J.K. Dobbins, you're not sure how long he's been good, but we're not sure how long he'll be as effective. And I think they're relying a little too much on the explosive plays that could haunt them. Because if you look at their track record last year, when they went 9-8, they beat up on bad teams, but they struggled against the good teams. And we've seen that so far this year, that their defense has struggled, and Bo Nix has also failed to find consistency, which in the NFL can really haunt you, and I think it has so far.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think they have that go-to play like going to an Amon-Ra St. Brown or a Keenan Allen or um, you know, the Jalen Hurts, that kind of thing. Just I think they were hoping they were going to get that out of maybe an Evan Ingram type of signing, but that's just hasn't happened. So I think they really fumbled away that Chargers game. I think that easily could have went Denver's way, and the temperature would be a little bit cooler about how great the Chargers team is, because that was not a very well played football game overall. A lot of mistakes were made, and the Chargers pulled it out to their credit, like we talked about. But there's been a lot of poorly played football. I think until we had that game last night, there was a lot of bad games this past weekend.
Yeah, as someone that has Bo Nix in our fantasy league, I am banking on him rebounding because I don't know what else to do on quarterback. Do I try to make a bid for Jaxson Dart and hope that he saves my season? Yeah, I know. Shoot, dude. Oh my gosh. Speaking of bids, I'm sure you noticed this. I accidentally bid for Kenneth Gainwell in your league. That was not intentional at all.
Um, yeah, I was going to say I don't think Kenneth Gainwell has that kind of value, but you do you, man.
Yeah, that's why I immediately dropped him. I meant to hit. I think it was Troy Franklin actually that I meant to hit, and yeah, just whatever. I'm doing better in that league than I am in Steve's league, so we'll see. We got to take a break. We'll be back with our picks. Let us know in the comments your contenders, your pretenders. I think we can all agree, though, after losing to the Browns, the Packers are indeed pretenders, and they always will be. It's the Lions' year. It's the Lions' decade. Packers are going to go never win a game the rest of the decade. You heard it here first. We'll be back. Speak now. All right, we're back with our weekly picks. Last week was a little frustrating for us. Thank you, Rams, for screwing the pooch on that one. But we are back Thursday night football. We are recording this on Tuesday, so we're a couple days away. We got two teams that we've been talking about a lot on this episode. The Seahawks go to Arizona, take on the Cardinals. Plus 1.5 for the Seahawks and minus 1.5 for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I didn't think about this one a ton just because I think the Cardinals, I think they're due a stinker. I think Kyler's had a couple of rough patches, or he always has his mental lapses in the game. He's one of those quarterbacks that are prone to it. And I do think the Seahawks, I think they possess a really good defense like we've talked about. And I don't think Arizona, like we've talked about, home field advantage, not as big. And Arizona's not exactly a terrifying place to play. So I went with the Seahawks on this one.
Yeah, I think divisional matchup. It's going to be low scoring. I think both defenses are maybe underrated, I guess nationally, I would say. So I guess the weapons for both teams probably are a little less than as well. So it's kind of that perfect storm of divisional matchup, maybe some less than on offense where it's kind of predictable for a divisional opponent. Saying that, I think Seattle has a little bit more, just like Eli alluded to. So I didn't think too much about this one too. I'll take the Seahawks.
Yeah, same, especially with Arizona losing James Conner. Seahawks defense has been really good. I like them in this one too. Then going on to Sunday, we have our second international game of the year. We have the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Dublin to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Dublin. This will be a 6:30 a.m. game for me, guys. So it's gonna be very early morning. Might just watch a lot of college football the night before, wake up very early, or maybe just never go to bed. But this starts the first game of a 2-week overseas journey for the Vikings. Next week they will be in London. Vikings are minus 1.5, and the Steelers are plus 1.5. Technically, the Steelers are the home team, but that doesn't really matter because this is Dublin.
Yeah, I had a hard time with this one because I actually think the international games last year sucked, but I think this one has potential to be a pretty good game. But in the end, I just took it down to I do think it'll be once again. I think it'll be a defensive. Whatever team plays better defensively will win this game, and I think the Vikings defense once again. Brian Flores has them humming. The Steelers have struggled. We've seen against the run, especially in week 2 with the Seahawks, and then week 1 with the Jets. Brees Hall ran wild. Not so much as last week, but they also Steelers benefited from a lot of nice breaks with the fumbles, and they recovered all 5 that the Patriots had. And that's not to say that won't continue. And they also did a good job of forcing those fumbles. But I do like Carson Wentz and the Vikings to pull this off. I think Jordan Mason will have a good game, and I think guys like Andrew Van Ginkel could have a very disruptive game against the Steelers.
I think this is going to be a really ugly game to watch, which definitely probably benefits both teams to some extent. I could see in upwards of 5 or 6 turnovers in this game, just with the blitz. I think Aaron Rodgers will kind of get pushed off his mark. The same thing with Carson Wentz. He tends to take a lot of sacks, and going up against the Steelers, there's going to be some forced fumbles. TJ Watt's going to have at least one forced fumble recovery in this game. But saying that the Steelers have been a little bit leaky as far as run defense and coverage, maybe some of that's just early season, kind of getting used to new personnel and communication and those sorts of things. I know there's been a couple of injuries as well, so I don't know where they're at being this early in the week as far as those injuries. I'm actually going to take the Steelers in this one. I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers over Carson Wentz, and I think the coaching of O'Connell versus Tomlin's a little bit of a push, so I'm going to take the Steelers.
Yeah, I'm super torn on this game. This is a game where I'll probably be going back and forth, changing my pick throughout the week. I'll give my arguments for both sides, and then I will say who I am picking. Where I could see Minnesota being the team in this one is honestly the defense. Brian Flores, I think that they can do enough. I'm concerned about the Steelers' offensive line. I know the offensive line was a lot better last week. They did not allow a sack last week, which was great. They've been a lot better in pass protection. They still have struggled though in run blocking, and if you're not penetrating the first second levels, giving Jaylen Warren just a chance to break off some yardage. If he's just struggling to get back to the line of scrimmage, this is going to be a long day. Steelers passing offense the first week looked good. The last 2 weeks they haven't shown that they can compete. So I could see the Vikings there taking this. Versus Pittsburgh, I think the defense is actually starting to click a lot better. Their run defense was actually a lot better last week. To Patriot running backs, they only allowed like 76 yards on like 22 carries or something like that. And I think the turnovers are not an anomaly or a mistake. That is something the Steelers try to do. And I think you're starting to see that more and more as the secondary gets used to playing with each other, as people start to get healthy. Is a big thing. Joey Porter Jr. has been out since the first game. Deshaun Elliott's been out since the first game. They both could be back in this game, and that would be a huge one for Pittsburgh. Jalen Ramsey's looked really nice. Brandon Eccles had a great game last week. Derek Harmon made his season debut last week, and he added a lot to that defensive line. Watt looks good. Herbig's been good. Hayward's been good. So I could see them being true menaces for Carson Wentz. Also, this is in Ireland, where Dan Rooney, the now deceased owner and chairman of the Steelers, he was the ambassador under the Obama administration. This is something that's really close to like the Steelers in terms of heritage, so I could see them just having a little more extra oomph for this game. That being said, O'Connell is a Irish last name, if I'm not mistaken, and Carson Wentz has the red hair and kind of has that Irish feel to him as well. So that might mean absolutely nothing. I am picking the Vikings here because I do think this is a trap game for the Steelers. It is it's overseas. They played horribly a decade ago when they went overseas. Granted, I get that the schedule is the same for both teams when they're going over, but I can see this being a trap game, a game that they should win that they end up losing to Carson Wentz, who looks like an MVP candidate for some reason. So I'm picking the Vikings. As we sit today, I'll probably change again throughout the week. That was a long spiel to get to our next game. Commanders travel to Atlanta. The Atlanta Falcons are looking to bounce back after being absolutely humiliated by the Panthers. Commanders, I believe, are probably going to be starting Mariota again this week. Still, they are minus 2.5, and the Falcons are plus 2.5. Who do you guys like in that one?
Yeah, since the last game had a long spiel, I'll make this one short. If you're a team that's firing guys on your coaching staff into week 4, that's a problem. Falcons just fired their wide receivers coach, which was baffling because to me, I feel like whoever their passing game coordinator should be the one that should be under fire. Watching Michael Penix throw checkdowns and short screen plays all game, I went with the Commanders regardless of who's starting at quarterback.
Yeah, this is going to be another ugly game to watch. Bijan Robinson's going to have to pretty much put the team on his back, in my opinion. So I like that take, Jonathan, on Carson Wentz there, calling him Connor Wentz or Seamus Wentz or whatever it was. But yeah, regardless of that, go with the Commanders as well. But yeah, I'm hearing that McLaurin may be out now as well. So with the quad injury, he's getting a second opinion. So I'm assuming that might be a multi-week injury. So this is going to be really ugly, another ugly game. I don't think we've had too many that we've gone through so far where I'm really excited to watch this weekend, to be honest. So I'm going to go with the Commanders.
I'm going to pick the Falcons in this one. I think that they will bounce back from last week. I feel like before last week, we were like, oh, these guys could be like contenders. And then last week just threw all that conversation out. I think they rebound. Especially, I'll change my pick if for some reason Daniels is starting this week. I don't think he will be. I don't think he'll be back until I think they have an early bye. So I think they're probably planning on bringing him back after the bye, which, yeah, I don't know. That team just has felt kind of sloppy to me this year, the Commanders. Not like the Falcons have been any better, but it is at home. I don't think that necessarily they win this game, but I do think that they at least cover the spread in that. So I will pick the Falcons plus 2.5. And then, honestly, this one I had a harder time with than maybe I should. Curious to know your guys' thoughts. Saints travel to Orchard Park, take on the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, I think we're all favoring the Bills to win this game. The big question is the spread. 15.5 as it sits right now on ESPN for the plus for the Saints, minus for the Bills. Who you guys got in that one?
Yeah, those big spreads are really tough to manage, but based off how it's been so far, the bigger ones have worked out. And I just don't think the Saints have a facet of their team that plays a full 4 quarters. And like we saw them give up a special teams touchdown against the Seahawks this last week with Torrey Horton. And I think ultimately, Josh Allen will be able to do pretty much everything that he wants in this game. So I picked the Bills. I could easily see the Saints covering and then end the game thing, but I think they'll be consistently behind by 14 for most of this game and ultimately win by like around 17 is where I expect it to be.
Yeah, Ed Oliver is definitely a key injury this week. I think I'm going to say Saints to cover this one. Not really excited about that, but 15.5 is a lot of points. The Bills' defense has been a little bit leaky so far to start this year. There was a lot of misfortune in that game. I know there's been a lot of special teams stuff throughout the NFL. That Seattle game got upside down really quick. And I don't think any NFL game is really indicative of, one team being 30 or 40 points better than the other team. That's just kind of how games go sometimes. So kind of like Miami covered against Buffalo, I could see the Saints doing the same thing.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills have yet to score under 30 points in a game this season, which makes it really concerning for the Saints. However, I agree with Steve here. I think that the Saints cover the spread here. This could easily be like a 14-point game, and that even if it's a two touchdown game or something like that doesn't work. So I like the Saints to cover. I do think the Bills win this, but the Bills, I do think their defense has posed question marks outside of the Jets game. So yeah, I like the Saints to cover here, Bills to win. Um, but yeah, I might change that throughout the week. I ended up changing my Ravens pick from last week. I don't, if you guys saw, I did end up picking the Lions quite happily. That being said, Lions play the AFC North again. They are going against the Cleveland Browns in Detroit. Plus 8.5 for the Browns, minus 8.5 for the Lions. The Browns, who just upset the Packers, I might add. Does that change how you're viewing this game, Eli?
No, I thought it might just be the same line that it was against the Packers, being another away game at just minus 7.5. But with the Lions 8.5, ultimately, I do think it comes down to, can the Lions still run effectively? Because I do think they'll be able to pass effectively. We saw Lamar beat up on the Browns secondary. Jordan Love struggled, but Jordan Love hasn't looked great to start the year. If Jared Goff is able to have his way with their secondary, and David Montgomery and Gibbs are able to do their thing, I do think the Lions will cover. I picked the Lions, but I do think this is a trap game in general for the Lions. I think they're riding off of a high and a short week. So they got to come in composed and ready, because it's not like the Browns are any slouches necessarily. But I did pick the Lions.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of games last year where our divisional opponents played teams like the Titans and Jaguars and played a lot of close games. I think the Lions are equipped to kind of take advantage of that. The Titans game, for example, last year, I think the Lions had like less than 300 total yards and ended up winning that game by 40 some points. I just think special teams, some misdirection, some different things where they'll kind of impose their will on the Browns as the game goes on, similar to what the Ravens did to the Browns. The Browns had more total yards, but the Ravens end up winning that game by 20 plus points. So saying all that, I think the Lions will cover for those reasons.
I'm going to pick the Browns to cover here, actually. I think the Browns' defense is legit, especially their run defense, and I think that that's going to pose problems for Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty. Unfortunately, I do think the Lions win this game. I don't think that, though, they win it by that much. I think this is a lot closer. I think the Browns are a lot better than people are giving them credit for. If they turn to, which they will at some point, they'll turn to Dylan Gabriel and or Shedeur Sanders at some point this season. If any of those guys looks like decently competent, I could see the Browns contending for a late wild card spot. That's just how good I think their defense is in watching them. For me, I chalk up the Browns Ravens game to being a division matchup where the Browns literally talked a bunch of crap leading up to that game and then just got their butts beat. Versus playing a team like the Packers pretty close. I could see them playing the Lions pretty close as well. I do think the Lions will win. I do think the Lions are moving quite quickly up the power rankings to being arguably the best team in the NFL right now. But I do think the Browns are just one of those teams that I don't think any contender wants to play. They're just a very tough physical team. So I'd like them to cover Lions to win. Then we go to a game that's probably going to be really crappy. Carolina Panthers go to Foxborough, take on the Patriots. Patriots trying to practice more ball security after last week, where they turned the ball over like 5 times. The spread here, plus 4.5 for the Panthers, minus 4.5 for the Patriots. Do Mike Vrabel and company get back on track in this game?
Yeah, I do think they do. I think the Patriots are a pretty decent team. I think Drake May has done well for the most part. He blamed himself at the end of that Pittsburgh game for the 4th and 1. But I do think that they will get Christian Gonzalez back potentially this week. That's big. That's a former All-Pro cornerback. Last year, I think that's big. Will Campbell will continue to get better. He did have a bit of a tough game against the Steelers, but can you blame them when you have Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt rushing against them on the outside? So I do think the Patriots will cover. I do think Trey Van Henderson, I do think we will see a heavy dose of him. And if you're going to get a heavy dose of your first time in your career, I think it's a good one to have in the Panthers. Struggling run defense. So I went with the Patriots. I do think they'll win this one by a bit above the spread. I think this is a good game for them.
I'm going to go the other way on that. I think the Panthers are already improving, kind of like they did late last year, and kind of figuring out what works. They absolutely shut out and totally shut down the Falcons last week. The Patriots, I just don't see any standout. Christian Gonzalez I could put up there, but I don't see many standout players on that squad. It was really challenging for them. Ball security, missed assignments, things like that. So just not a lot of good things on offense, but not a lot of execution, and just not valuing that. Kudos to the Steelers for taking advantage of that. Basically targeting Ramondre Stevenson, but just not prioritizing ball security in a game against a team that's looking to take it away from you. It's just a huge misstep. I mean, they had a big chance to win that game. Really carried most of that game, but in true Steelers fashion, they were able to win that game. So, saying all that, I'm going to take the Panthers.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one. But I'm picking the Patriots to rebound here. I think Vrabel's going to light into those guys throughout this week at practice, and they're going to come in hot. And honestly, I think Drake May is a budding superstar in this league. I think in the next few years we're going to be talking about him in the terms of the top 10 to 5 quarterbacks in this league. I really like him. Good job, Steve, on that one. Honestly, you're going to have like 2 top 5 quarterbacks in this league if you just keep both. Just keep Herbert and Drake May. You might as well at this point. It's ridiculous. But hey, Eli found his quarterback with Danny Dimes. So that's all that matters. But yeah, I like the Patriots to cover the spread here. I could see this being a double-digit win for them. I don't know what to make of the Panthers right now. I guess we'll find out after this week a little bit more. Then we get the debut of Jaxson Dart at home against the Chargers. The Chargers minus 5.5. The Giants plus 5.5. Does Jaxson Dart make this game competitive, or are the Chargers arguably the best team in the AFC?
No, it's not a competitive game. I think if you're debuting Jaxson Dart, it's probably one of the worst teams you could debut against, especially right now. Jesse Minter's complex defense, I don't think will be a great welcome to the NFL moment for Jaxson Dart. I do think he might show promise here and there. He has Cam Scatterbo starting to blossom, and it's pretty easy when you get to throw to Malik Neighbors, who had an off week last week. But I picked the Chargers minus 5.5.
I think it's going to be a huge breakout game. Very first game in the NFL for Jaxson Dart. There's a lot of weapons. Cam Scatterbo really balled out. That might be a blessing in disguise, having Tracy go down in that last game. I think Scatterbo is going to run wild. I know the Chargers are improving on defense, but you still have Khalil Mack out. You have a couple other injuries on that defense. I could really see the Chargers taking this game lightly. And especially with Najee Harris going down, they're going to have to find some complement in the backfield for the Chargers. The Giants do have a good front seven. They'll put some pressure on Herbert. And while I do like Justin Herbert throughout the whole season, he did show a little bit of weakness last game here and there, kind of like we've seen in the past couple of years, where everybody wants to make him a top 5 quarterback in the league automatically. And he proves again and again he's more of a 6 through 10 kind of guy. So I'm going to take the Giants, and I'm going to take the Giants to win this game. Jaxson Dart's going to have a coming out party.
I agree with everything you just said, Steve. That is exactly what I am feeling. Jaxson Dart goes for 300 plus yards, 3 plus touchdowns. Cam Scatterbo goes for over 100 yards from scrimmage with multiple touchdowns. Malik Neighbors balls out and wins win some games for his fantasy owners, man. The Jax attack starts now. The Giants are gonna get back in it. They have their franchise quarterback, or at least they think so after this week. We'll see for the rest of the year. Yeah, I like the Giants not only to cover but to win this game. I think that this is a huge trap game for the Chargers. On a guy where you have very little tape, very little knowledge of how to prepare for him. Dude, give me Jaxson Dart. Give me the Giants here this week. Then we got a good matchup. Oh, Eli, you want to comment?
No, the game will speak for itself when they get blown out. I don't need to say anything.
Where's the game at?
New York. So
the Meadowlands?
Yeah.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
They're going to be chanting Jaxson Dart's name like by the end of the fourth quarter. MVP chants will be raining out. That fan base will be reignited.
That Sunday night environment was fantastic for him. How'd that work out?
And so they had Russell Wilson, man. They had nothing to cheer. They had a guy throwing it at the crossbar, throwing it into the tunnel, man.
Yeah,
he's just going to take it himself.
Yeah, that 4-play sequence was garbage for Russell Wilson. That basically cemented the quarterback change.
You guys think Russell Wilson has enough self-awareness to retire after this year? Because I feel like he needs to.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he has it. I don't know if he has the awareness.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it.
I will say the benching of Russell Wilson absolutely sucks in terms of compensatory pick formula, because now it's probably going to be like a 5th or 6th rounder for Steelers. But hopefully the Giants can play good football. NFL is more exciting to me when the Giants are competitive, in my opinion. We got a good matchup, though, for our next one. We have the Eagles and the Buccaneers. Buccaneers at home. They are plus 3.5. Eagles minus 3.5.
Yeah, the Eagles, I think, these are the two bend not break teams right now. One of them has to break because they're playing each other. It's tough because the Buccaneers likely are without Mike Evans, which is pretty major. But you have Emeka Egbuka still. I don't think Chris Godwin will play, but it's getting to the point where you can start to think Chris Godwin may play some snaps. But I did go with the Buccaneers here, just with the Eagles. I don't know what to make of their offense still. They had a really good second half, but Saquon hasn't looked quite as effective. I don't know and they did lose Lane Johnson in that Rams game, so that'll be interesting to see. So I went with the Buccaneers, and they're at home.
Oh, this is a really tough one. So definitely one of those I'm going to switch several times. The Mike Evans injury is very concerning. And like I said earlier, not having Kancey in the middle and some other things there. We did talk about some fortune of the Bucs winning close games. So the Eagles will kind of put things back together a little bit. They kind of finished that obviously last game strong. So I think they're going to continue to do some of those things they did last week and maybe open up the playbook a little bit more based on, like you said, some injuries on the offensive line. And it'll definitely be a battle. And I'll take the Eagles in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think that this is going to be a battle. I think the key for the Buccaneers to win this game is going to be having to control the football and be able to win with Bucky Irving and your running backs. And I don't know if they can do that against the Eagles through 4 quarters. So I do like the Eagles here at this stage. The Bucs injuries to me just kind of scream that this is going to be their first loss of the season. I do think they'll rebound after this, but I like where the Eagles are heading right now in terms of this point in the season. Then we have another crappy game, matchup between 0-3 teams. We have the Tennessee Titans taking on the Houston Texans. At Houston, it is plus 6.5 for the Titans, minus 6.5 for the Texans. I feel like that's a very large number for two really bad offenses. Pretty sure both teams are averaging under 20 points a game. So I don't like that spread. I don't know how you guys felt about it. Maybe this is easier for you guys. Maybe you feel like CJ Stroud's bouncing back this week.
I don't even think it's a matter of CJ Stroud bouncing back. I just think Nico Collins will have another big game. I think Christian Kirk coming back, I do think that helped the offense slightly. I think he had a decent game, and he'll only play more, especially because their rookies just aren't playing much. And I think it's going to be a matter of, I think the Texans defense will overwhelm with Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter. So I went with the Texans. I do think they'll bounce back, and I think the Titans are just they don't have enough pieces yet.
I like the Texans as well, but I think it's going to be kind of a last score cover kind of thing. They do need to open things up a little bit more, really target Nico Collins, like you said, and I think definitely target, get Woody Marks out there a little bit more. It's a little sluggish having Nick Chubb out there. Really his only big run this year was when the Bucks allowed him to score at the end of the game. So he's been really sluggish, and the snap count for Marks has gone up from 10% to 30 to 50% in the first 3 weeks. So definitely something to keep an eye on in this game.
I like the Texans to win. I don't like them to cover the spread in this. So I would pick the Titans to cover the spread. I think this will be a tight, low-scoring game, but I do think the Texans end up victorious in the end. And then we got the undefeated Indianapolis Colts facing arguably their biggest challenge of the season, going on the road to Los Angeles. It'll be here in SoFi against the Rams. -3.5 for the Rams, +3.5 for the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for them, the Rams don't really have much of a home environment, so that helps them out being away. And I do like the Colts. Their pass rush has been a bit spotty. But they do have DeForest Buckner, and they'd like Laitu Latu coming back from injury. They'd like him to keep up. So I do like the Colts and Indiana Jones to cover and win this game and keep the hot streak going.
Kind of after the way that Eagles-Rams game ended last week, I think the Rams are going to come back strong in this game. I think just the NFC again being superior to the AFC. I think the defense of the Rams will slow down the Colts, and Danny Jones is going to look a little bit more like the Danny Jones of the end of the Giants days and that sort of thing. Jonathan Taylor will also get contained. But one thing they should try to take advantage of is going deep down the field to kind of their big targets. You could see an Adonai Mitchell score. You could see something like that, just taking advantage of the size of the Rams cornerbacks. So if the Colts can capitalize on that, they can cover. But I don't think they'll put a game plan versus McVay that they will be able to. So I'm going to take the Rams.
I like the football that the Colts have been playing up until now. I think that they cover, but I do think that the Rams end up victorious here. Then we have San Francisco 49ers at home versus Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that this will actually be a really ugly game in terms of quality of play. Who do you guys like there? It is -3.5 for the 49ers, +3.5 for the Jaguars.
It sounds like Brock Purdy will be back, and with that, I do like the 49ers. They still have most of their offensive pieces. Jennings should come back. So I'd like the Niners. Their defense still has enough of their pieces to disrupt Lawrence. So -3.5, I'll take the Niners.
Yeah, I agree. Lawrence can start to look small if you put some pressure on him and really key in and take away his top options, which he's kind of struggling to find so far this year. Brian Thomas Jr. has been a little bit slow coming out of the gate. They haven't really figured out how exactly to use Travis Hunter. I would like to see him get the ball a little bit more. And just overall, they seem to be doing not finding really their identity on offense. I think they've been a little bit fortunate thus far. But I think the 49ers kind of have been as well with Mac Jones being able to pull out those last couple of games. But I am going to take the 49ers to cover. I agree with Eli.
Yeah, give me the 49ers to cover and win. I'm cooled on the Jaguars from a week ago and earlier in this season. They're starting to look like the same old Jaguars where nothing's really changed. And the Travis Hunter pick is looking worse and worse by the week. They really need to get him more involved. Then we have this is going to be an exciting matchup. Two teams with losing records that are actually Super Bowl contenders, arguably. Baltimore Ravens in Kansas City take on the Chiefs. +2.5 to the Chiefs, -2.5 to the Ravens. Are people underestimating the Chiefs here in this game?
No, this is one of my easiest picks of the week. I don't want to give the Chiefs the light of day because I think they'll get blown up by the Ravens at home.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs they haven't addressed kind of Jonathan alluded to their running game. They keep taking 6th and 7th round running backs and thinking it's going to improve that side of the ball. Yeah, 6-7 running backs, but so yeah, I mean, same thing. We're using guys like Tyquan Thornton and kudos to Juju and Hollywood Brown, but it's just I just don't think it's enough. I think you have too much athleticism. I think Lamar, Henry, Derrick Henry is going to have a big bounce back game, even though it was very entertaining to see him kind of slide into the bench while he threw his helmet last night. I do think the Ravens will bounce back, and I actually think they're going to win this game by 10 or more.
Yeah, I might end up changing my opinion because my instincts and my knowledge tell me to go with you guys, but I feel like I like the Chiefs at home here. Home field. We've talked about home field advantage not mattering as much in the modern NFL. I still think it matters at a place like Arrowhead. Patrick Mahomes has been very good at home throughout his career, and honestly, for both of these teams trying to start 1-3, I think for the Chiefs, though, it's been an uglier 1-2. So I could see them just having a little bit more gusto, a little more oomph. Maybe we have a very magical day from Mahomes and Kelsey to secure the win. I think this will be a tight game, but the Ravens defense hasn't shown me a lot outside of the Browns game, which isn't saying much. So I do think that the Kansas City Chiefs can pull some of the magic out of the hat and make this a close game and also, I think, win this game. I like the Chiefs here, but that could also be my Steelers bias, wanting the Ravens to go 1-3. I will admit that. Then we have a game where we'll get to see what they are like after a strong showing last week. The Bears go to Vegas to take on the Raiders. It's +1.5 for the Bears, -1.5 for the Raiders here with 4.5 minutes left to go in the episode.
Yeah, I think the Raiders had a sneakily good second half, and they have had a lot of explosive plays in the end of that game, which the Bears are susceptible to give up with their defense. So I actually picked the Raiders to beat the Bears. I do think this will be a shootout, though.
I think the Raiders are absolute trash this year. I would definitely take the Bears in this one. Don't want the Bears to win, but the Geno Smith and that offense is just a complete mess. I'm going to take the Bears.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bears take this one. Steve and I talked about this last week. We don't understand why you bring in Pete Carroll. This team's not going to be competitive in the next few years, unfortunately, even though I'd like to see Pete Carroll win. But Bears on this one. Then we get the Packers going to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb is out. So it's George Pickens, wide receiver 1. It's +6.5 for the Cowboys, -6.5 for the Packers. Do the Packers rebound this week?
Yeah, I think the Cowboys absolutely suck. So I think the Cowboys are my Raiders for you guys. I think they'll easily cover the Packers. Good rebound game for them against a bad defense.
Yeah, I think the Packers will cover as well. Unfortunately, I'd like to see a repeat of what the Browns did, but I'm going to take the Packers in this one.
I might end up switching this, but I'm going to take Dallas to cover. I do think Packers win, though. Then we got the Jets traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Dolphins -2.5, Jets +2.5. Do the Jets or do the Dolphins get their first win of the season on this one?
I thought this one was pretty easy for me just because I think the Dolphins looked a lot better last week. I think they looked a lot improved. I think Tua started to get the connections. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I like them to rebound. and I think they're a team that could sneakily string a couple wins together. I'm not fully out on Tua yet.
I think this might be the last time you see Mike McDaniel on the sideline. It's going to be this is going to be a real Earth, Wind, and Fire celebration for Aaron Glenn on the sideline. He's going to get a Gatorade bath at the end of the game. I think they're going to absolutely obliterate the Dolphins. They don't look good at all. I think Buffalo Bills took them very lightly. A lot of dinking and dunking down the field, and I think the Jets will completely take that away. I'm going to take the Jets to win this game easily.
I actually agree with Eli on this one. I like the Dolphins. I think they've been playing better, and I could see this being an Ollie Gordon multi-touchdown game, getting some goal line work there. I think Aaron Glenn has to wait another week to get his first NFL victory. I like the Dolphins to extend Mike McDaniel's career just a little bit longer. Probably not by much, though. All right, then we have the last game of the week. That would have been an excellent showdown had Joe Burrow been healthy, but he is not healthy, and so the spread is pretty big. Plus 7.5 for the Bengals, minus 7.5 for the Denver Broncos in Denver. Does Bo Nix finally put it together and have a great game, or is this game very tight? Who do you like here, Eli?
I think he'll have a better game, but I do still like the Bengals to at least cover. 7.5 is a pretty big spread, and I don't think they'll play as poorly as they did last week. So I like the Bengals to at least bounce back to not get obliterated.
I think, unfortunately for the Bengals, the Broncos kind of have a sour taste in their mouth after that Chargers game last week. So I think they're going to button things up and really focus in on those details. And I think that defense is really going to show up and kind of take that tape that Brian Flores put out there for him. So I like Denver in a blowout. Jamar Chase will show out this week, though.
I agree with Steve. I think the Bengals looked absolute awful last week, and I think they're going to look that way. Their defense just sucks. So give me Denver to cover and to win. Well, that's our picks, guys. Let us know in the comments who you guys got. Thank you for another episode. We will be back next week. Until then, speak now or forever hold your peace. Peace.